Okay, so as we stated, this is approximately where we left off. I'm just curious, could I see that paper that's due tomorrow?
Yeah, I have it right here.
You might want to look at that last question. Yep. Okay. So what about this would be your clue that we're talking about plants? That's one, but we're talking about this right here, not that, this. Do animals have a cell wall? No, they don't. They've got a cell or plasma membrane, but not a cell wall. Okay, but yes, energy is made by the process of photosynthesis. Yes, plants do that, not animals. So one of the things to think about, it's unfortunate that many farmers have their corn crop that has been, what we say, bowled over, pushed over. The wind has down by Lenox, I know that was impacted pretty bad over this last weekend. Typically, corn plants can withstand a lot of straight-line winds, but once it approaches 100 miles per hour, that would be pretty tough, even for tall corn plants to be able to do. Typically, this concept here allows them to be able to stand, because of that rigid support, be able to stand upright. Now, don't worry, we're going to come back. Just to show you, we don't have a whole lot left. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Okay? Does everyone have this content that wants it? Okay? Otherwise, we're not in any hurry here. We're not trying to break any speed limits. Let's take our time, make sure we get it. We're good? All right. Oddly enough, what might do that? Movement for the cell. I mean, you ever heard of a Venus flytrap? Those actually move. That would be a pretty good example for that. They have this cilia and flagella. Excuse me. Does anyone know what cilia actually are? It's when you start coughing, you get that agitation in the back of your throat that causes you to want to have to cough really bad. That would be an example of this right here. Yes? About movement across the cell membrane? No. That's right. Okay. Not a lot of information. Does everyone have this content that wants it? Okay. So, cellular transport. What do you suppose is being transported? Materials across a cell membrane. What does your last question on your paper say?
What are the movements across the cell membrane and describe how they are different?
Okay, so that is what we're talking about here. Here's 1, here's 2, there's 3, and then there's 4. That's why I was kind of curious, unless you came and got your book, that if that was how you're going to answer that last question. So unless you want to go a little further in depth, this information is probably pretty boring, and I would probably agree. Who would agree with that? Okay, fair enough. But life's full of little challenges, isn't it?
Do you get like, what's the word called?
Agitated?
No,
No.
kind of
But the answer to that was yes, but
no. Do you get like annoyed that people don't like this stuff, or are you just like it's whatever? It's like up to you?
it's whatever. I'm totally understanding that this probably isn't that interesting, but that's why I'm asking, unless you wanted to go into a more in-depth reason on how this happens, it probably isn't very interesting. Because right now, like the A&P class, if you feel nauseated, for instance, there are gastric pits which have receptor sites for cells that would receive or send a message to your brain saying, we do not feel very well, so we are about to expulse everything that's inside of our stomach.
So vomiting.
That would be vomiting, yes. Okay?
That's what chemotherapy does to you.
It's unfortunate, but yes, that's probably true. I think for those who have ever gone through that process,
It's not fun.
my mom has had to go through that, and obviously you're speaking from personal experience. Just by about the time you might be starting to feel a little better, you probably have to take another dose of that. Would that be right? I'll take that as a yes. Okay.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
Osmosis. I learned about that.
That's why you put the book underneath your pillow, and hopefully that information
Yeah.
makes its way into your head.
I tried, but then when I take the test, all the information just does not appear.
You know, that's one of them things you're going to have to find a way to overcome that
Earplugs,
process.
earplugs.
So it doesn't fall out? Yes. So in this process, why would we use blood gases as an example of this process, do you think? What are blood gases? Really what? Really tiny. Tiny, tiny. Can you see oxygen molecules? No, you cannot. You can see carbon dioxide molecules. No, we're talking about the atomic level. So unless you have a scanning electron microscope, you cannot see that content. Okay, so how does that get into the body? Well, it diffuses across the cell membrane. Okay. Now, the nutrients that you took in from those pizza crunchers. Now, and I understand some of you probably don't like the school meals here. But what do you suppose the chances are of trying to keep 200 plus people, well, just say the high school, 100 people happy? Are you always going to be happy with what you're served? Okay, so the answer to that is probably no. But how many of you said, hey, I didn't think today was too bad? Okay, and just keep that in mind. The ladies that work here, it's not an easy job to keep you people fed. Okay, but with those pizza crunchers, some of the protein that you might try to obtain from that meal, that is way too large. It's not a small molecule like this here, blood gases. So it has to have a little help. And it's kind of like you could say, what does the teacher do with every lesson? They facilitate what's going to go on or try to take place, darn fly, with what takes place during that day. They're, like I said, the one in charge, the one that kind of leads what's going on. So if we have larger substances like proteins, okay, they have to be let through a protein channel. Okay? Now, what do we see that's similar between these? Yeah, diffusion is there twice. Okay? What do these have in common? It's in the details up there. Neither one of them require energy. In other words, for some of you who are in track, you probably like running downhill better. Is that correct? What takes more energy, running uphill or running downhill? Running uphill does, unless you get to be old and fat like myself. Well, then it takes a lot more energy to keep you from rolling down the hill and hurting yourself. That's the problem I've got. So with that then, neither one of them require energy. They go down a concentration gradient because it doesn't require any energy. But what is the difference between these two then, besides the naming? Okay, which one moves the larger substances? The facilitator, facilitated diffusion, moves larger materials. Okay. Now we're getting to Brandon's osmosis. Yep. The old phrase, water, water all around, but not a drop to drink. Okay? I happened to see that, to keep a long story short, Forrest Gump was on last night. Caught the tail end. And then the movie Castaway was on after. You ever heard of Castaway? Tom Hanks is in it. Nodding our heads, yes. Okay? What would the problem be of living on an island like that? The very first thing you'd probably want to do is get fresh what? Water. Fresh water. Well, you've got all that water around the island. Plenty of water around. That's right. And this is why. Okay? If someone is hyper, does that mean they got low energy or high energy? You got very high energy. So a hypertonic solution, okay, we're talking about the water concentration, okay? So think about this. If you drink all of that salt water, okay, there's more water on the inside, okay? So that's going to draw that water out of your cells. And when that happens, your cells shrivel up and they die. That's just a fact of life of what would happen. So a way to keep these separate, the solute concentration is low, but it's on the inside of the cell. The salt is on the outside of the cell. There's little salt on the inside. That's what this is trying to say. There's more water inside the cell, so to create that balance, it draws all that water out of there. And typically what happens, the nervous system might be one of the first ones to go. Means, have you ever, let's say, worked out pretty difficult, pretty hard, you didn't drink enough water, then all of a sudden it's kind of like I'm starting to imagine things or that aren't there, or you feel a little oozy or something to that effect. You're trying to balance that out because you're getting dehydrated. Okay? So, don't drink salt water. We can pick on you guys too if we wanted. I always use that as an example too. What do you think, ladies? Pick on the guys? Yes. It's for pests, right? So I should just swat around 23 in here and see if we come back tomorrow. He was on the edge. I don't know if I got him or not.
You did, Bill.
Okay, he's probably in pieces. Okay? This is where we can pick on the guys. Kind of like, ladies, look at all what you got to pick from. Water, water all around, but not a drop to drink. You got guys to pick from all over in this class.
But they don't want any, and nobody wants me. Nobody wants me.
Life's full of little challenges. Yep. Do you ever think that maybe if that's the end goal that we just haven't met them yet?
Yeah, don't worry, there's somebody. Emily.
Okay.
Flip it.
Starting to drink salt water, all this water we got around.
Didn't they dig for like a day or something? Yeah. 27 hours and 37 minutes.
That's still more than a day.
And it was the worst time of my life.
Okay. Now finally, the last two, and probably the most difficult to understand. And I'll show you why. Now, notice both of these can result in cellular death because either too much fluid can be inserted into the cell, it explodes and dies. Too much fluid can get pulled out, and then it shrivels up and dies. Active transport is different than the other three. So if concentration gradients were going down, like diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion, this concentration gradient must be going what? Not down, but rather up. Okay? Is the human nervous system and electricity kind of related? You're nodding your head, yes. One of the reasons we know that is, does the body conduct electricity? Yes, it has to. Otherwise, movements would not take place. All those that you see is because of this process here that occurs that fast all the time. Okay? So it's just the way the man upstairs designed us that this process is quite efficient. 250 miles per hour, I'd say, is pretty good speed between your head and your leg. Okay, short amount of distance, but it gets there pretty quickly. Okay, there's not a lot left. Have you had enough, or you want to finish this? Just get it done. Okay. Okay, can we move on? Okay. Here we go. So because it's going up a concentration gradient, this requires energy. All right? And I know this diagram is in your book, but some people are maybe better at reading and interpreting than others. But if we actually, I'll draw this up on the board and explain it as we go, so hopefully you can understand that process. Okay? Because if long distance running was fun for everybody, I'd have lots of cross-country runners. If track was fun for everybody, we'd have lots of people out for track. If band was fun for everybody, we'd have lots of people in the band. Okay? But it's not for everybody. Science is not for everybody. Okay. So can I shut this down? Just about. We're done writing. Earthquake. Oh, that's nothing funny to laugh at. Oh, I'm just watching. If anyone watches the video on this, it looks like everything's shaking. Okay, now can we shut this down? Okay. Okay, what I want you to think about is this. Put your thinking cap on. Okay? You don't need to draw this. I mean, you can, because this is also in the book. This has 2 layers to it. So what is this called? A what layer? Yeah, it's composed of lipids. It's got 2 layers, so it's a phospholipid bilayer. This is a protein channel. Okay? So if there was some potassium out here, which there is, this diffuses across that membrane very easily. Okay? It's high outside, and this is inside the cell where it's low. So if it's low here and high out there, can that diffuse across that pretty easily? From high to low, yes. Facilitated diffusion will allow that to happen. Okay? Well, if there are 3 sodium ions in here, okay, it's low, or excuse me, it's high inside, and then it's low outside. Okay? So this also can diffuse across that channel very easily because it's going from high to low. But now what we see happening is now that we've got these 3 sodium ions out here, okay, it's high outside the cell because those 3 were diffused. We don't have hardly any inside here. So is this high or low? It's actually pretty low. Okay? So if it's high here, typically it goes from high to low, but this is then pumped back against its concentration gradient. Okay? Those 3 ions get pumped back in. Okay? Because there's still lots and lots of sodium inside of here. That's just one way to look at it. Sodium is always pumped back against its concentration gradient. Okay? And there's a diagram of that. I can't remember what page it's on. I can find that out right quickly for you. I think I got it marked. It's actually on page 206. Yep, 206. Okay. All right. That is all I've got. We'll catch up to you next time.